This is CBC Here and Now.
I think, there's never going to be zero risk, but I truly believe that the risks of keeping them home far outweighs the benefits.
The policies to go back is actually a weak and, unfortunate policy.
It's the first day back to school again.
Returning to class during the Omicron wave.
While some restaurants in Cornerbrook are closing due to the COVID-19 health restriction guidelines, one place is about to open.
We know that people is gonna come if the food is good, of course, and it's gonna be good.
I'll tell you about a new Mexican restaurant that's going to give it a go during the pandemic.
Another extreme cold warning in place for parts of Labrador, and then more rain, unfortunately, on the way for parts of the island.
Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, thousands of students from kindergarten to grade 12 returned to the classroom today for the first time in 2022.
The move to reopen schools has sparked a heated debate, with some saying it's the best decision for students
and others saying it's too soon. Here and Now's Mark Quinn reports.
Safety measures that have been put in place in schools are probably the best that any province has in the country.
Shelley Dalton is the parent of a high school student in St. John's, and she fears closing schools for prolonged periods is doing real harm.
The future relies on children's education, on their socialization. Everything depends on them. And I really believe that, we can't keep sacrificing the needs of kids for the needs of society.
Sobia Sheikh is one of the parents who disagrees with reopening schools. She says it doesn't consider the wider population of parents and grandparents who could become seriously ill.
We have a lot of responsibilities that are not just to the specific educational system, and I think I would call it reckless. I would call it definitely not caring, not compassionate.
Sheikh says the province has handled the pandemic well until now, but she wants primary school students to stay home until they're fully vaccinated with 2 doses. She's chosen to keep her 10-year-old out of class until 2 weeks after his second shot.
And so we were kind of shocked when the school system, when the Minister of Health said, and the Minister of Education said we were coming back to school, when none of our kids, any of our kids from 5 to 12, if they live in Newfoundland and Labrador and have been vaccinated here, none of us have the 2 shots yet at that point.
The debate about reopening and the ongoing spread of COVID-19 was evident at some schools today. The English School District says more than 10,000 students, almost 18% of all students, were absent today. It also reported that 660 school district staff members, including teachers and custodians, were absent for reasons the school district says may or may not be related to COVID. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Meanwhile, students in Shahajit are going to have to wait a little bit longer before going back to school in person. The Innu community was one of several that had a COVID outbreak just after Christmas. Now, that community runs its own school, and Director Tim Jack says the school leaders decided amongst themselves to wait an extra week to see what happens elsewhere in the province.
Well, Memorial University's Faculty Association is calling on the university to delay the return of in-person classes. Classes with fewer than 99 students will resume on campus next week. The association wants that delayed until February 28th, after the winter break. In a news release, it says an overwhelming number of academic staff has voiced concerns. MUNFA says instructors should be given the flexibility to deliver courses remotely.
It's a fairly quiet day weather-wise today. Finally seeing some sunshine. We did see some snow overnight, a couple of centimeters in some places, but overall ridge of high pressure is dominating. Let's take a look at what's going on out there across the region. We are seeing a little bit of messy weather over the maritime provinces. That is headed our way tonight, but some of that cold air gripping Labrador, and definitely was a cold night last night, and we're in for another cold night tonight. That extreme cold warning now in place for Lab City Wabush. and we are going to see those temperatures dipping again tonight down to -39, with that wind chill feeling closer to -50. Certainly in for a cold night. We do have some more weather on the way for the island. Unfortunately, some rain. I'll break the full forecast down when I come back.
The number of people in hospital because of COVID-19 has dropped by 1 today. There are now 20 people hospitalized, but 5 of those are in the ICU. Of the nearly 1,800 people who were tested by public health since yesterday, almost 300 are positive, which makes a positivity rate of less than 20%. Public health isn't testing anyone anymore, though. Most of the new cases are in the Eastern Health region again today. There are still close to 2,700 known active cases in the province. Well, to Corner Brook now, where many restaurants are feeling the crunch with the latest Alert Level 4 restrictions. Some of them are even closing. But that's not stopping one man from opening a new Mexican restaurant downtown. Here now's Colleen Connors has the details.
January in Corner Brook, and restaurants are quiet. On top of that, recent provincial health restrictions only allow half the normal amount of people inside to eat and drink, even less if the place is small. Places like this gastropub just couldn't make a go of it and closed, with the owners saying this is a very difficult time for business owners who need help from all government levels. But down the road on Main Street, it looks a little different. It's not much to see from the outside, but Jorge Cortez and his husband Diego Sereno have been very busy this past couple of months, transforming the restaurant space in this hotel into a Mexican getaway. Cortez has a culinary degree and cannot wait to share his cuisine with Corner Brook.
We're scared, but we're excited at the same time.
Cortez has worked at restaurants in the city and says regardless of the COVID-19 restrictions, patrons will support local.
If it's not dine-in, they'll have takeout. If they don't have takeout, they'll have delivery. That they don't mind. They want to keep supporting like the businesses. So I think that's been nice, and that's why we're not so worried about that part, because we know that people is gonna come if the food is good, of course, and it's gonna be good. They're gonna come because they are willing to support whoever is open.
For the popular sushi spot in the city, the owners feel the same way. They have been closed to the in-dining experience since December, but customers are consistently ordering takeout in the evenings, keeping them busy. And this new Indian grocery store and takeout opened late last year. While they can only allow 4 people in at a time, they hope to push past the pandemic restrictions and attract more customers. And here on Main Street, Cortez and Sereno are busy waiting for their first shipment of food and putting the final touches on the kitchen of their new restaurant. Now, whether it's dine-in, takeout, or delivery, they plan on being open to the public next month. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Corner Brook.
Well, Metrobus can welcome more passengers on board today. The service is now back to full capacity as long as everyone is sitting and wearing masks. People who are sick or supposed to be in isolation should not get on the bus. There was a limit of 19 passengers, and buses were operating on a reduced schedule since the beginning of January. Next Monday, Metrobus will resume its regular winter routes, and it begins its new Zip network then too. That's the extra rush hour service every 15 minutes weekdays and Saturday on core routes. There's plenty of evidence now that some of the above average demand for tobacco products in this province is being met by organized crime. Retailers are blaming this province's cigarette taxes, which are the highest in the country. But as Terry Roberts reports, they're getting very little sympathy from anti-smoking advocates and the provincial government.
Here's the evidence. Cartons and cartons of cigarettes seized last year, destined for the black market in this province.
So this would be considered unstamped tobacco products, or as what is commonly called as contraband tobacco.
And here's more proof. Discarded cigarette packages collected in and around St. John's. How do we know these cigarettes are illegal? Because of the branded, colorful packaging. And this labeling, clearly identified as cigarettes manufactured on a First Nations reserve, likely in Ontario or Quebec, where under the law they are only to be sold tax-exempt to smokers with Indigenous status. But law enforcement say they're turning up in larger volumes right here in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Over the past 2 years, we have seen an increase in the number of unstamped contraband tobacco seizures that we've had in the province. The actual seizures themselves, we're seeing that they're larger in volume.
And tobacco retailers are blaming illegal cigarette imports for taking a big chunk out of their business last year.
We are talking about a 20 to 50% drop in the sale of legal cigarettes in stores across Newfoundland and Labrador.
So what's the appeal? Price.
The average price of a carton of legal cigarettes, which would be 200 cigarettes, is $175 a carton, including tax. You can get contraband tobacco as little as $60 a carton anywhere in the province.
Some places are selling them $45 to $50, $50 to $60 a carton.
Retailers are blaming this province's country-leading tobacco taxes for fueling the black market. More than 32 cents in taxes on a single cigarette.
It doesn't surprise us that organized crime, who's supplying people with these products in the province, are ramping up and taking advantage of supply and demand.
The Convenience Stores Association believes the province is losing millions annually in tobacco taxes.
I guess the only thing that we could ask is to maybe create some sort of a task force or put something together that's going to combat this.
Here's an example of legal cigarettes, packaged in standardized drab brown, graphic photos, and strongly worded health warnings, stamped to prove that all applicable duties and taxes have been paid to the appropriate government. If you're smoking anything else, you're breaking the law and you could face criminal charges.
Like any organized crime activity, it causes us concern.
Higher tobacco taxes are the most effective strategy to reduce smoking.
But anti-smoking advocates are skeptical about the claims by tobacco retailers.
They have a commercial interest to exaggerate contraband.
And believe cigarette sales are lower because more people are kicking the habit.
The Convenience Store Association, which has long-time links with the tobacco industry, does not want cigarette sales to decline. And thus, they use contraband as an argument against tobacco taxes. The Newfoundland government should be praised with respect to its tobacco tax strategy, which increases public revenue, which improves public health by decreasing smoking, especially among youth.
In fact, Rob Cunningham believes retailers are a hindrance to the goal of reducing the number of smokers in the country.
We have a real problem with convenience stores selling cigarettes to minors, so it is hypocritical of them to be critical of the government when they should be critical of themselves.
If there's a problem with contraband, the finance minister says that's an issue for the police to address, but she believes other factors are at play as well.
We have cessation programs. We have an introduction of vaping to the province. So there have been other types of things, other influences as well.
So has her government's tax policy led to more of this?
I don't have any data that would suggest that is the absolute case.
As for those tax increases,
no regrets about increasing taxing. As I said, for cigarettes, we're trying to discourage people from smoking. We're trying to make it so that the people will say, I want to stop smoking.
Despite more scenes like this, the province still collected nearly $135 million in tobacco taxes last year. So while health advocates and political leaders may wish to see a dramatic decline in the number of people who smoke, we still have a long way to go. Terry Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
What we've heard today is mixed emotions ultimately. There's been a great sense of uncertainty walking into the buildings this morning, as well as a real sense of insecurity at day's end.
Still ahead, how was the first day back to school from the teacher's perspective? We talk to the union in about 15 minutes.
Well, some bad news for snow lovers on the Avalon. Unfortunately, there's more rain on the way.
I feel like this province is filled with two kinds of people. There's the people who love the winter snow, and there's the people who can't wait to see it go. You were having a lot of fun last night, Ashley, outside in the snow, so I'm guessing you're disappointed to be putting a bit of rain in the forecast.
Yeah, I really do like when the snow sticks around for a little bit. It is winter after all, but temperatures, this morning kept some of that snow. We saw some more of that overnight last night, but temperatures today were not too bad out there. Let's take a look at where we sat this morning. Around -1 for St. John's, and those temperatures frigid again up across Labrador, sitting around -38 for Lab City. Churchill Falls takes the winner at -39 this morning, but those temperatures didn't really move too much across the island. However, up across Labrador definitely did, back up to about -18 in Happy Valley, Goose Bay as your daytime high today. You've lost a degree or two here and there up across the Big Land. Those wind chill values into the -30s for Nain, and feeling more close to the minus double digits for Stephenville right now. Feeling more like -11. Now, speaking of wind, the winds are going to ramp up a little bit tonight. We will see those gusts upwards of about 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, but some coastal areas, especially those that are prone to southeasterlies, may see those gusts upwards of about 80 kilometers per hour on the west coast. And we're going to see that very quickly into the morning hours, pretty much across the board as that system moves in with 40 to 60 kilometer per hour winds. Briefly again for the northern peninsula, and then as we get into the afternoon, those winds should die down. Now, we're starting to see some of the snow associated with that system just showing up on the radar now, and it should start, if not already, within the hour for the southwest tonight. And note what happens with those temperatures. They actually climb up as we get back into that southerly flow, 1-2 degrees. So areas further inland will likely see snow, but towards the coast, especially along the south coast, should see rain. And then those temperatures will eventually warm up for the east as well as we get into the morning hours, and then all that snow will transition through to rain. So temperatures tonight should bottom out around -6 to -11, a little cooler for the northern peninsula. And then again, that cold night up across the Big Land, -27 tonight in Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Now, as we head through the day tomorrow, watch what happens with those temperatures. So even though you'll see some flurries in the morning hours through central, as we get through to 8-9 o'clock in the morning, we'll see that jump up to single digits. So we may see that end as either showers or drizzle through the day, or rather through the morning hours, and then those temperatures are going to start to drop. So you transition back to the potential for some flurries on the west coast. And then for the Avalon or eastern Newfoundland, really, those temperatures will start to drop as the afternoon rolls through. So you'll see that transition back to snow, and mainly eastern Newfoundland will see that snow redevelop again into the evening hours. Now that will move through fairly quickly. 10-11 o'clock we should start to see that snow ending, but not before we see about 5-ish centimeters of snow, it looks like. Now, right along southern areas, particularly inland and in those higher elevations, you may see more like 15 to 20 centimeters. And then as we head through the day tomorrow, those temperatures, again, fairly cold up across Labrador. So in and around the Cartwright area, see where you see that 5 to 10 band there. That will likely be closer to 10 to 15 because we've got all of that cold air, and that's really when you see that snow in the heavier or in the higher amounts. Now, as far as rainfall goes, we're looking at somewhere between 5 to 10 millimeters for the northern Avalon. Southern Avalon is where we should see the most, could pick up between 20 to 30 millimeters of rain. Now, those winds, like I said, will be a little bit breezy out of the south in the morning, 40 to 60 kilometers per hour, but the winds will die down as the day goes on. And those temperatures there, you see 5-6 degrees, they'll drop as the day goes on, and you'll see that for the west coast as well. Corner Brook will hover around 1 degree to start, and then eventually drop off below 0. Now, up across Labrador, along the strait, again, you're looking at a little warmer, -1 to -3. The rest of Labrador, quiet and cold. Now, there is another warm up on the way for the weekend. I'll have those details when I come back.
Thanks, Ashley. It's been 10 days since Ottawa brought in stiff vaccination rules for cross-border truck drivers. They now need to be fully vaccinated in order to skip quarantine when entering the country. But some drivers from Atlantic Canada are part of a cross-country effort to get those rules reversed. Steve Bruce has more from PEI.
This was the scene in Western Canada on the weekend as a long line of truckers started the drive to Ottawa as part of a so-called Freedom Convoy. They're frustrated with pandemic restrictions, especially the government's new rule requiring drivers crossing the Canada-US border to be fully vaccinated to avoid isolation. PEI driver Tyler Beaton shares in that frustration. He's part of a group of Islanders that plans to join that convoy on Thursday.
I myself am vaccinated, but I also see the horror that other truckers face. Have those truckers who can't work because of the mandate sit there in fear on how they're going to bring food to their families.
The Atlantic Provinces Trucking Association says it's not clear how many drivers from the region plan to join the convoy, but the association does not support it.
We don't feel it paints a nice picture about the industry.
The Trucking Association and many other industry groups did lobby against the vaccination rule, arguing it would add to the driver shortage and hurt supply chains. But the executive director says a convoy is the wrong tactic that could do more harm than good.
We don't want the convoy to end up in a roadblock. We certainly need drivers working and delivering goods. We are in a shortage of driver, and obviously, this disrupts the supply chain.
Beaton, for one, admits joining the convoy will likely impact his delivery schedule this week, and he fears he could lose his job. He wasn't comfortable saying which company he works for, just that it's based in New Brunswick.
Yeah, there will be probably loads that get missed out on. And it's not to be selfish about it. We need to be heard.
Though in a media release today, the federal government said it won't back down on its vaccination rule for truckers. And even if it did, there's still the U.S. government to get around. It has brought in the same requirement for truck drivers when they cross the border into the States. Steve Bruce, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Thousands of students and teachers in the province returned to the classroom today. Feelings are mixed about the move. Some are in favor, while others feel in-person instruction should have been delayed. So how did this first day back in class go from the teachers' perspective? Trent Langdon, president of the province's Teachers Association, joins me now. So the association has been against the timing of this return to class, but now that it's happened, what are you hearing from teachers about how today went?
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. And I think that's the key piece there, that we were against the timing of it more so than an eventual return. What we've heard today is mixed emotions ultimately. There's been a great sense of uncertainty walking into the buildings this morning, as well as a real sense of insecurity at day's end. I've spoken to several teachers who've said that, going through the schools as if they've got to be hypersensitive to everything, double and triple checking things, making sure kids are wearing their masks and so on, almost feeling as if they have to come down too heavy on students to make sure they're in compliance. So it's been a very insecure day for our members.
What about attendance? Have you heard any stories from members today about teachers or students who just didn't show up to class?
We have all anecdotally, because those numbers wouldn't typically come into us by virtue of the work we do. But just in speaking with teachers, we've heard cases of some schools where only 25% showed up. We've heard cases where 75% showed up. It really varies from region to region. And in terms of reasoning for that, we've heard, the isolation piece, or in some cases, families just not comfortable in sending their children along.
And what have you been hearing from teachers about what they think they need to make them feel more secure in school, to feel safer in the classroom?
Well, from day one, we've really encouraged government to look at a bunch of different things. One being, ideally, we would have seen a lower alert level, and we would have seen lesser case counts and so on in the province. But in terms of actual things on the ground, there needs to be a heightened degree of contact tracing, whereby we can really rely upon those things too, that if there is a case, we know where it's been and where it could potentially be going. That's one piece. There needs to be heightened focus on enforcement of protocols around masking and other forms of intervention and protocol. Non-community use of schools right now, unless it's purely essential. Those kinds of things will increase the confidence levels, and as well making sure that all proper PPE is available to members as they need it, and they don't have to go searching for it.
And I understand that your own children are back in class today. How are you feeling about that?
Well, yeah, I mentioned it on a previous interview, and I have two children, but they're older, right? They're both in junior high school, late junior high, and they're both double vax. So that comfort level is there for me when we have the majority of all of our K-6 students have only been able to get one yet. And that was part of our advocacy way back when, to say, why not delay the startup until we can guarantee that by far the majority of our kids in our schools have been doubly vaxxed, meaning our K-6s. And the time frame we were tentatively given would be like early February for that, which is not that far away. As well, another deciding factor for me personally in sending my own children was I'm relatively healthy, as are other people in my household. And but I tell you, if I had someone that was immunocompromised in my home, or there will be access to elderly people and so on, I would not have sent my children. I was in a position to send my children.
What concerns do you have going forward? We don't really know how this is going to play out. What worries you about this situation?
It's the uncertainty by far, Carolyn, of how it's two-pronged, really. We have a safety issue whereby we've been told already, fully expect to get Omicron, fully expect to be part of the transmission cycle, fully expect your students to get it. And that in itself doesn't evoke confidence in anything, really. But the other side of it is the operations piece. We have significant substitute teacher shortage in this province. And we've advocated from the start that if we're going to do online learning, let's stick to it till we're absolutely sure we can go back. If we go back too early, it may be a case of on and off. And the worst thing we need right now is not to have enough substitute teachers, whereby schools need to close. We've already seen one case of that in Labrador today, by virtue of not enough substitute teachers that operationally they had to close. And then all students in that school went today without any education, just we'll call it like it is. So we need to have a bit of a better plan moving forward, and clearly identify that either we're open or we're closed, or we're open or virtual, one or the other.
All right, Trent Langdon, thank you so much for this.
Thank you, Carolyn.
There's been a lot of attention on the mental health of kids as they head back into the classroom. It's one of the main drivers of getting kids back into the class from public health's perspective, but at the same time, for other students, the fear and anxiety of going back while COVID is still spreading widely is real. Janine Hubbard is a clinical child psychologist, and she's here with some tips on how to get everyone a little more comfortable with what's happening. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks so much, Peter.
How much are you seeing this pandemic anxiety in the kids that you're working with?
Oh, well, and again, like every stage of the pandemic, there's a whole lot of individual variability. For some kids, schooling at home has been fantastic. For others, it's just been a real struggle, and they are very much looking forward to getting back to home. Anxiety is heightened in all of us right now, and it's important to remember that that is a feeling that we are all having. Parents, kids, teachers, all of us, so that this is going to be yet another adjustment and yet another struggle kind of moving forward, figuring out how do we manage our anxiety given a new situation.
So let's talk about some of those strategies. If you've got a kid who's anxious and worried, what are some of the things that you can do in order to help make them feel at ease?
First thing is being mindful of how you model your behavior. If you are really anxious, you might want to make sure that you're limiting some of that discussion in front of your kids. But far more important is to let them know, look, I'm feeling anxious too. Here are the things that I'm feeling nervous about, and here's how I'm trying to cope with them. So that you're acknowledging these negative feelings are very normal. We're all having them, but that there are strategies. Or even if you don't have all the answers, here's what I'm doing to try to make things better. So again, modeling both mastery of coping, but maybe sometimes modeling some, I'm trying my best to cope.
One of the things you talked about there is modeling behavior for the kids that, if they see that you're anxious, that's going to rub off on them. What about for parents who are feeling a lot of anxiety themselves and kind of can't figure it out or can't rationalize it themselves in terms of why some of these decisions are being made or whether this is even the right choice for their kids?
Well, and I think that's the situation, honestly, for most of us at the moment, to varying degrees. And like I say, normalizing to your kids that, yeah, I am feeling anxious. Like I say, if it's really overwhelming, try to have those discussions out of earshot. Really important to make sure that there are discussions happening at home or activities happening at home that have nothing to do with COVID or school or any of those kind of things. Some family game nights again, pull out some fun activities or get out on some hikes, some walks. Remember, it's really important for you to be taking care of yourself, so that self-care, whatever those activities are, if they're ones that make sense to include the kids, great. If they're ones where you need to take a little bit of time for yourself, remember, it's like the airplane with put the oxygen mask on yourself before you then go to assist your kids. Sometimes that's what we need to be doing as adults as well, is making sure that we're checking our own mental health and our own coping strategies, because that will put us in much better shape to then help out the kids.
Last year, I think there was a sense of optimism because the vaccines were rolling out. There was a lot of talk of the light at the end of the tunnel, and people kind of had the feeling that, okay, maybe we're getting over this and, we're going to turn a corner and we're going to... And I think going into 2022 with cases being as high as it is, how much is the uncertainty? We don't know the end game. We don't know what's going to happen throughout the rest of the year. How much do you think that's weighing on people's mental health?
Oh, this is hitting people hard, partly because we are 2 years in, which means all of our reserves are depleted. We're all tired. Our adrenal systems have been on overload for 2 years now. So even people who are doing relatively well are feeling that mental and emotional fatigue. And as you said, we've each step along the way kind of had some optimism. And initially there was a lot of shared community. We're all getting together with this. We're helping each other out. And what's happening now is we're seeing a lot of anger and feelings of betrayal, and a real sense of kind of helplessness and hopelessness, because there's feelings of, I did everything you asked me to do. I followed all of the steps. I made major sacrifices, both personally and for my family, financially, employment. I've given up a lot. And now you're telling me that might not have been enough, and there isn't a clear end at the light of the tunnel. People are feeling very angry, and unfortunately it's being taken out in inappropriate places because you can't get mad at COVID. I mean, you can, but it's not going to do a lot of good. So they take it out on politicians, they take it out on healthcare workers, they take it out on journalists, they take it out on somebody who's a little slow in the line at the gas station. So we know that even just people's problem solving skills at the moment and their ability to cope with that uncertainty is at an all-time vulnerable state. So please know that you are not alone in this, and there are no real clear answers right now, which is also what's really heightening anxiety for everyone, because the answers aren't clear and there are pros and cons to all of the decisions people are making right now. Remember, everyone's making the best decision they can for themselves and their family about school in this moment. We don't know what's going on in their lives. We don't know their personal circumstances. So if people are making choices that are different from the ones you have made for your family, please be kind, please be understanding. Try as best as possible to avoid judgment and making comments, especially in front of your kids, about choices that perhaps the parents of their classmates have made.
Well, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Peter.
Canada is withdrawing the family members of diplomatic staff stationed in Ukraine as tensions grow over fears of a Russian invasion. Global Affairs says the safety and security of Canadians, personnel, and their families is its top priority. The move comes just days after the U.S. and the UK recalled the families of their embassy staffers. Members of the Ukrainian community in Toronto are anxious and worried about the safety of their loved ones. They're imploring the Canadian government to do more to help. Jessica Ng has that story.
We're really afraid that Russia will make a move.
Varvara Shmigalova left Kiev 5 years ago, but many of her friends and family are still there.
My goddaughter have her school missed because they got calls from somewhere in kind of Donetsk that says that school has bombs in it. So we are under constant threat and attacks.
The armed conflict between the two countries has been ongoing since 2014. In recent weeks, Russia has gathered an estimated 100,000 troops near the border. Canada has offered Ukraine a $120 million loan and is considering sending small arms to counter a potential Russian invasion. Ihor Michaelchishin of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress says that should be a given.
We've seen the United Kingdom, United States, NATO allies, G7 allies send defensive weapons to Ukraine that will help them defend themselves in the case of an invasion. And we think very strongly that Canada needs to join that list.
Michaelchishin says Canada should go further and explore imposing sanctions on Russia.
The severe sanctions that would happen in an internationally coordinated way after an invasion. Our perspective is, though, of course, to do these things now to dissuade Putin. And we need to see this as not just a community issue. This is indeed a security issue, a NATO issue, a border issue for us.
Meanwhile, Shmigalova fears for her family.
When I recently been home in September 2021, I feel safe at home. But at the back of your mind, you always know that at any point in time, you can get like an actual bombs in your city.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
The start of the 2022 Winter Olympics is less than 2 weeks away. Today, the men's hockey team roster was unveiled.
We're going to Beijing to do one thing, but we're going to do it as the para team, the women's team, and the men's national teams. We're going there to win a gold medal. That is our job.
Of course, this year's Olympics will look different from past Winter Games. Like the Tokyo 2020 Games, there will be no fans in the stadiums. There will also be no current NHL stars. The league pulled its players due to concerns over COVID and schedule disruptions. Well, a new drugstore in Nova Scotia wants to change the way people look at everyday products. The Teasdale Apothecary opened last week and offers a unique way to package your prescriptions. Carolyn Ray has that story.
It might not look like your typical drugstore, but these shelves are filled with all the usual products you'd expect to find in one: shampoos, soaps, scrubs. But one thing you won't find at the Teasdale Apothecary is packaging.
An example of that is, even just pregnancy and ovulation tests. That you can find those in most pharmacies and drugstores, but we chose a Canadian brand that they package theirs in individual or groups of strips, and they're plastic free.
Their environmentally friendly mandate doesn't stop there. In the pharmacy, Miranda Teasdale is making sure all of her new customers know they have a choice. Instead of taking their prescriptions home in plastic containers, they can pay a deposit for glass vials instead.
So with those plastic vials that you get at a normal pharmacy, they're really hard to recycle and they can't be reused just because the plastic can leach certain chemicals and they're not able to be reused safely or properly.
The sisters came up with this plan for a low-waste drugstore when they were living in Alberta. Miranda Teasdale was working as a pharmacist and struggled with the amount of waste the pharmacy produced. She'd fill bottle after bottle with medication, knowing that some of that packaging would end up in a landfill. She knew if she opened her own business, she wanted to do it differently.
When you look at prescriptions that people take every month and they're on, say, 5 or 6 or more medications that they're getting refilled monthly over the course of several years, that can add up to a lot of kind of waste diverted from the landfill.
Last year, the Teasdales decided it was time to move home to Antigonish and make their dream happen. The province's Pharmacy Association believes theirs is the first in Nova Scotia to offer the glass vial option.
We can make really easy swaps, and we can start to phase out some of these products that have become so popular and so disposable.
The sisters are hoping this is a system that catches on and inspires other drugstores to adopt environmentally friendly options. Carolyn Ray, CBC News, Halifax.
Fossils found in Bacon Cove could help rewrite the history of certain deep-sea creatures. The fossils were found last March by German researchers in a layer of rock 522 million years old.
Yes, Radio Canada's Patrick Butler visited the rooms to learn more about the exciting discovery. But first, we should mention this interview was recorded before the latest pandemic restrictions came into effect.
Ellie, tell me where we are right now.
Well, we're in the building where the rooms houses the natural history collections. So it's called the Natural History Collections Facility. And this room is the Earth Sciences workroom. This is where we store paleontology and geology specimens.
Okay, well let's look at them.
Yes. So they're here in this cabinet where I have incoming material. So that's newly acquired specimens. So there they are. These are actually what we call thin sections. So they're very thin cuts through the rock that are then mounted on microscope slides.
In general, what is significant about it?
The researchers have identified the fossils as potentially cephalopods, but they were found in beds of rock that are older than what is considered now the earliest cephalopods are. So I think if this is confirmed as cephalopods, it brings back the origin of cephalopods, I think 30 million years earlier than previously thought.
So this is just one of thousands, I guess, of those. How many fossils of significance are there here?
So we have about over 3,000 specimens that are currently cataloged. So that means the fossils have been identified and studied by researchers, but that's only a very small proportion of the paleontology collections. There are also thousands and thousands of specimens of fossiliferous rocks that are yet to be studied and that are available for scientists to work on.
Some Prince Edward Island students had a different kind of school assignment last week, and it sounds like a good one. Go outside, build a snowman.
Sounds good to me. Teachers used it as a learning exercise on writing and language skills. Here's a look at what some students created.
So we came up with the Ultimate Snowman Challenge, offering kids from all grade levels, English and French additional language, to participate. And the only real requirement was that they take a picture of their finished snowman and one with their family with the snowman. Some people are dressing up their snowmen in clothing. Some are using things that they're finding in the environment to put on their snowman. Others are painting their snowman. And it's just so much fun because everybody has their own take. So the teachers who are working with the students will use that as an opportunity to build vocabulary, to do procedural writing activities. But really, we wanted the students to have some fun, to learn together, and to be able to share those images. And they're wonderful. The ones that we're seeing so far are just wonderful. The favorite part for me is to see those pictures with families with the finished product and everybody with a smile on their faces. And we'll come up with a new challenge every Friday. We'll present it to our students and see what they do with the next one as a way to keep them motivated and engaged in not just the learning process, but having fun, doing some of those wellness activities with their own families that promote learning at all times.
This weather update is brought to you by the NL 511 app. Know before you go. Check road conditions, highway cameras, and the provincial plow tracker with the NL 511 app.
It may only be Tuesday, but it's not too early to start thinking ahead to the weekend. And Ashley, it looks like things are going to get a little warmer.
They are. Unfortunately, we're going to see a warm up by the time we get to the end of the week. But in between there, some pretty nice temperatures, winter-like temperatures anyway. Let's take a look at what's going to happen on the future tracker as we head into Thursday. So Wednesday night, that system will move off, transition back to snow. Again, we could see a couple of centimeters with that for eastern areas of the island. And then tomorrow, Thursday, fairly quiet. We will see some more flurries move in for Lab West, but other than that, not a whole lot happening. Temperatures will dip back below zero, -4 to -8 across the island, except for the northern peninsula, where some of that colder air is going to sink a little bit further south. So about -16, the daytime high for St. Anthony, under sun and cloud, or sunshine rather, some sun and cloud across the island, and again those flurries for Lab City. So -19 for you. Now as we get into Thursday evening, that snow will work its way across the Big Land towards the west coast, where we'll see some onshore flurries, and through the day on Friday, generally staying fairly cloudy, but the clouds will move in through the afternoon the further east you go. So lots of sunshine to start. Temperatures again not moving too much into the minus single digits. Starting to see that warm up creep in for southeastern Labrador, -11 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay, -19 or -9 rather for Cartwright. And again, those flurries working their way towards the west and south coast through the day on Friday. Now, that warm up, like I said, looks like we'll see a break Friday, Saturday for St. John's and eastern Newfoundland. By Sunday, temperatures rise back up about 8 degrees. We could see some temperatures even warmer than this, but at this point, that's what it's looking like. And then the temperatures drop. So we'll see that transition back over to snow. Similar forecast for central Newfoundland. At this point, keeping your temperature in and around 6 degrees, but windy conditions as well for most with this system on Sunday. Definitely have to iron that one out, but it does look like we will see rain for a good portion of the day. And then for eastern Labrador, you're looking at temperatures around -20 for Saturday, then -15 with some snow for both western Labrador as well as the east through the day on Sunday. Take a look at this shot. Sunny Saturday in Harbour Grace. Boy, was it a beautiful day. Michelle captured that photo for us. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
That's a perfect amount of snow for me. Just a dusting, not enough to shovel.
Yeah, great shot. Thank you, Michelle. And Peter, tomorrow is Wednesday and a briefing day. What are we going to expect tomorrow?
Yes, it's a very busy briefing day because it's a full house. Not only are we going to have the Premier, the Health Minister, and Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, the Chief Medical Officer of Health, but they're going to be joined by the Education Minister and the head of the English School District. So we're expecting an update on how things have been going for the first couple of days of classes, now that kids are back in person in schools. So yeah, that briefing will be at 2 o'clock Island time, 1:30 in most of Labrador, and we'll be bringing you all the latest. We'll figure out what changes you need to know about, and we'll have it for you tomorrow night.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. And thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Hope you can join us again tomorrow.
Have a good night.